Hello everyone, welcome to Skill Youth and welcome to the second recorded session of your program, that is 30 Days Communication Challenge. As I have already shared with you that in this particular session there are three main things that I would like to discuss. First is things that you should consider before speaking in front of anyone or before speaking to anyone. Okay. Second is the speech structure. So I'm going to tell you how you can structure a speech, what are the elements that you should always include in a speech, and how to proceed with a particular topic or anything that you want to talk about, right? And the third thing is figuring out the keywords, right? So in this one I will let you know what it is once I come across this particular topic. In this particular video, let us understand this thing, that is things that we should consider before speaking in front of others or before talking to someone. Okay, so let us see. So there are many things we sometimes avoid, or we do not even think about before talking to someone or before speaking in front of an audience or maybe in a meeting or something. So, and those things are very important, specifically when we talk about like confidence building, when we talk about speaking in a proper way in front of a large audience, or even in front of a single person. Let us say you are in an interview and you want to say something and you want to express your opinions. So there are a few things that you should consider, and I'm not talking about like just the main answer that what we are going to say, but how you should say something becomes equally important as what you want to say, right? So this particular topic where I'm talking about some things that you should focus is basically something which focuses on the part how to say something, okay, rather than what to say. What part we will cover in like like figuring out the words and everything else. Okay, so let us understand a few things. So the very first thing that I want to tell you is clarity. Okay, what do you mean by clarity? Clarity is whatever you say, it should be to the point, or it should be so much clear that the other person who's listening to you, or who's like reading something that you have written, should not have any doubts or confusions in it, right? That's what clarity is. So let us say there's a a very young child of 2 to 3 years age, or whatever age, but he or she is like very young, and there's a person who's in like his or her 20s, right? And you want to convey the same message with that person as well as with that person, right? To a child as well as to the youngster. Now understand, even if what you want to say is exactly same, the way you will explain to both of them is going to be completely different, because the way a child understands a thing is different, and the way an adult understand a particular thing is completely different. And which is why whatever way you will choose, that would depend on your audience. In this case, your audience is at like, on the one hand it is a young child, a very young child of your 3 to 4 years old, and on the other hand it's a like an adult who is in his or her 20s, right? So that means we need to understand that many of the things depend on the audience whom I'm talking to, right? So the first thing is clarity. So how to build clarity in your speech or while you are talking to someone? Well, the very first thing to bring clarity is to create sentences which are shorter and simple. Well, the length of the sentence can again differ depending on what you want to say and of course the person you are talking to. However, the simplicity again would depend how much you know in order to convey your message and the person you are talking to. So everything would depend on two things: how much knowledge you have, and the kind of person you are talking to, right? But clarity here can have like multiple meanings. It can be in terms of the vocabulary that you use. Of course, it doesn't matter if you have like a very advanced vocabulary. If you're using advanced words with somebody who doesn't have any idea of those words, it would be like meaningless for him, right? Because he or she will not be able to understand what you want to convey, right, to that particular person. Which is why vocabulary should depend on the person you are talking to. If you think that the other person would understand the words that you are saying, good. You can use any word, whichever you would like to. If you think that the other person has no idea of high-end vocabulary, then the suggestion is to use simple language, simple sentences and simple vocabulary, so that the other person can understand what you want to say, right? Now why clarity is necessary? Why do you think, like, why shouldn't, if I have like lots of words in my vocabulary, why shouldn't I use it? I mean, this is a question, that like you might come across this question. Well, it is very simple, right? When we talk about communication, communication is about conveying a particular message. If you are not able to convey your message properly to anyone, that means your communication is zero, even if your vocabulary is very high, right? So which is why little things matter a lot. So whatever you say, whatever you speak, whenever you create a particular speech, start from simple things. Start from short, simple and easy to understand things, and you will realize that gradually it will become a habit of how to construct long speeches without making it complicated for yourself as well as for others to listen. Okay, fine. Okay, so the second thing to consider is your pace. Okay, pace is basically the speed at which you talk. It can be faster, it can be slower, so it can be like an average speed, and that is completely okay. But the problem is that sometimes when we speak very fast or when we speak very slow, what happens is the person who's listening to us might not get too much or might lose his or her interest while listening to us. The reason is, for example, if I'm speaking very fast and the other person is not able to understand what I want to say, what will happen that after some time he will lose interest, because he's anyway not able to understand anything. Then after some time he will stop listening to you, right? At the same time, if I talk very slow, very low in energy, very low in volume, what will happen? The other person will not be able to connect with the thoughts that I want to express. Which is why when we talk about good communication skills, you should have a proper pace, a pace that is controlled, a pace that depends on the understanding of your audience. See, ultimately it is all about who is listening to you. It can be a child, it can be an interviewer, it can be some personal people around you, it can be some professional people around you, it can be hundreds of people, it can be a single person who's sitting in front of you. So again, everything in communication depends on this particular thing, right? On the audience, on the person you are talking to. So pace, how to maintain pace, it's not easy, because we are in the habit of talking at a particular speed. And specifically when we talk about English, or when we talk about situations where we are less confident, where we are nervous and we hesitate to put out our points, in that particular situations, actually it happens that few people in nervousness talk a little faster, because they want to just finish whatever they have started, so that they can consume less time and they can just get over with it, right? So it has happened, it has happened with me in the past. It has happened with other people whom I have taught, and I have observed this very as a normal behavior of anybody who's nervous, anybody who's hesitant, to speak a little bit faster in order to just wrap up whatever speech he or she has to provide, right? So this is where you actually go wrong, because you need to control your pace. Controlling your pace can actually help you in multiple ways. One, your audience will understand what you want to say, because it will be at a pace which he or she can understand. There would be clarity, because when you speak in a medium tone or in a medium speed, the other person will have clarity of thought, because he will understand clearly what you want to say. When you control your pace, you get a chance to think about what you have to say next, right? Your mind basically works simultaneously to provide you some points which you have to say next, right? If it is a prepared speech, then it becomes very easy, because of course at at the time you are controlling your pace, your mind simultaneously will provide all the points that you have gathered together in order to provide the particular speech or a presentation, or maybe in an interview if you have prepared a question, you will have everything in mind. And even if there's a new situation, a situation which you were not prepared for, in that particular situation also, if you control your speed a little bit, it will help you to think about points simultaneously. So if you're saying something, side by side your mind can work on the next points to say. So which is why control your pace. You should not be like very fast when you talk. You should not be very slow when you talk, because it will be boring for people, which is why, right? So try to understand what pace you are comfortable with as well, right? Because sometimes there are people who would speak a little slow, and again their fluency will differ because they were more comfortable speaking faster. So again, this thing completely depends on you, that what pace you're comfortable with in your native language. The same pace you have to try with English as well. Okay, so the next thing is sentence structure and vocabulary. Okay, so this is like I have somehow already covered in the clarity part. So sentence structure and vocabulary, as I've already told you, will depend on the person you are talking to. So there are like different kinds of sentences. There are simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, lengthy sentences, short sentences. Vocabulary, again, basic level, medium level, intermediate, or you can simply say advanced level vocabulary. So whatever kind of sentences that you choose to communicate, and whatever the kind of vocabulary words you choose to communicate, should again be dependent on the person you are talking to. If you think that they can understand the higher level things, use them. Otherwise, just focus on the basic things in order to make your points reach your audience, right? Now, of course, now the next point, which is actually again similar to pace, but still it should be like covered, that is your voice. Okay, so it's basically like your volume of your voice, right? So it's very common when like we are nervous, we either will speak in a very low volume, right, or we will speak very loudly, right? It is like dependent on other like different people. Everybody has their own way of handling hesitation and lack of confidence problems, right? So that means that it definitely has like a huge impact on the audience. Now understand, if it is in a meeting and there are 10 people sitting and you start speaking but the last person cannot hear you, that means your voice is low, right? So your voice should be as high as the last person in a particular room can hear you clearly. Okay, so that should be like focus when you talk about like what kind of volume should I have while speaking. Focus on this thing, that if it is a like small room, only a few people are there, then again your voice should not be as loud. They should be able to understand what you are saying. Your tone as well as your voice volume should be accordingly. However, if it is like a large number of people you are talking to, or maybe you are speaking on a mic, focus that your voice should be as much as the person who are sitting at the last can easily hear you. Okay, very simple, very easy to understand, but difficult to maintain, of course, difficult to apply in your life. But don't worry, this particular video is all about the things that I'm telling you that you should do. After like some videos, or like in my like upcoming videos, I will be talking about a few things in detail, that how you can incorporate them. Okay, so don't you worry about it. If there's anything, I will definitely discuss in the sessions. Fine, so let us move on to the next point, that is taking pauses. Okay, so many people think like taking pauses is bad, but it's actually not. You can understand, like, we are not machines, right? It's not like a button dabaya and we just continuously we start speaking without taking any breath or any pause in between. So you need to understand for how long you have to speak, and within that particular speech for how should take a break, right? So it is not necessary that you just continue speaking and speaking. It won't help at all, which is why actually pace also help a lot in this case. When you speak in a very faster speed, you get tired after some time, you get exhausted, and you do not get a chance to take a deep breath. But when you maintain your pace, it becomes easy to breathe in between. So basically these two things are actually related, right? So whenever you feel like that there is a requirement of taking a short pause, like 3 to 4 seconds, take it, that's fine, right? It won't affect the audience. It is just like you are human, they are also human. They won't be able to understand you if you just start as like a recorder and you just do not stop in between. So you have to understand where to take a pause, where to stop, and when to continue. Of course your pause should not be awkward as in it should not be a very long pause where audience is just staring at you that now when will you speak, like is the speech over or what, right? So it should be short and like 3 to 4 seconds where you can take a deep breath and continue with your rest of the speech. Fine. So the last thing that I would like to cover in this particular topic is gestures and postures, right? But before that, I just want to say that there are many things that can be added in this particular list, but I don't want to do it as of now, because it is not about telling the number of points that I'm writing here. It's about how many of them can be used in your speech or how many of them you can use in your speech, right? So that's why I'm going to restrict it till only 6. These are very important main points, right? So I would say start one by one, right? Start figuring out which one is your strength and which one is your weakness. So you can be good at clarity, but your pace might not be good. So figure out if there's anything that you're already good at, right? If you are at, then tick it and then focus on the next part that you think that you really need to work on. Pick out the weakness out of it and then start working on it from today. Okay, so rest of the things, that if there's anything left, if there's anything else that I would like to discuss within this particular thing, I will consider it later on, but for now focus on all these things. So gestures and postures. Now, so I just want to ask you a question and think about it. So if I just stand like this right now here and I start saying, right, that there are some points that you should consider before talking to anyone, and these points are number 1, number 2. So understand that how boring it can be, and it looks so stupid, it feels so stupid to stand like this and talk to you. So gestures and postures can be very little things. For example, the usage of your hands, the way you stand, the way you make eye contact with the person you're talking to. So because currently I have a camera in front of me, so my focus is only at the camera, but I'm just making this video that you are going to watch it in such a way that you are sitting in front of me, right? But if it's an interview and there are like 4 people sitting, and so you cannot do you cannot just talk to one person and you can ignore the rest of thing. No, it cannot be done, right? So you have to maintain the right eye contact with people. You have to use your hands in the right way. It should not be like कि कभी यहाँ कभी ऐसे बहुत ज़्यादा ये भी नहीं कर सकते, right? The problem is that usage of hands and every other gesture or postures is not exactly easy, because few people have habit, again different kinds of habit. For example, few people, like for example, I'm holding it because I have to write, but few people hold it in order to consume their hesitation in it. Like for example, some people will do like this while talking. It's actually very distracting, right? If I'm doing like throughout this and I'm explaining something, half of you people would be looking at the pen rather than on my face, right? So it's actually distracting. You should understand that how much movement it's required to communicate with the person. If you're sitting on a chair talking in an interview, giving an interview, of course the movement would be lesser. But if you're giving a speech, explaining something, that you can move a little bit there, you can move a little bit there, you can maintain some eye contact with people. Again, depends on where you are, what kind of situation you are in. This particular topic, that is gestures and postures, we are going to cover in detail, after some of the other session. I'll see, when I can cover it. But this is something which I'm actually going to cover in a lot detail. We are going to understand how to maintain eye contact with people, what kind of hands gesture, what kind of standing postures, and everything is suitable depending on what kind of situation we are in. Okay, so we are going to focus on all these things, don't worry. But yes, for now, just understand that all these points are important and you need to focus on whichever is the best part of you and whichever is the worst part of you, and accordingly you have to set your goals. Again, the main goal have been already told by all of you to me, but this is something that is a way to achieve that goal, right? So pick which is a particular part that you are weak in and start working on it. Okay.